Call the meeting to order. We're not going to do any minutes, so we can roll from there, and let's talk budget, Cheryl.
Okay, I do apologize to the committee. Last week when we talked about budget transfer, I said I didn't need one for that night. I was within the parameters set by the committee. And then I forgot to go back to the agenda and ask you to approve any transfers that are necessary to close out the year. So since we have this meeting tonight, I would like to do that. I'll draw your attention to one report that says FY17 Budget Appropriation Control Report, June 28, 2017. If you look at the balance remaining column, I'd like to balance the accounts out that I know we need transfers to balance at this point, and then make some other transfers in advance for things that we're trying to get done by the end of the year. And then still ask for that vote to little things that come in here and there that might put me over the balance out to zero. The auditors like to have it balanced out. The other report will show you what the transfer request is that I'm asking tonight. It does have the wrong date. I apologize. It has last week's date. I'll fix that for the record. So what I would like to do, I've written it down the bottom corresponding to letters. We'd like to transfer $170,000 from benefits to regular education instructional support. The balance left in there is basically due to our change in health insurance and the number of people that switched, Medicare, unemployment, and workers' compensation, that it's all there, and retired teachers' health insurance. You know how we used to have to pay other districts? That law was changed, we didn't have to do that, and we had budgeted for that. That's why we have money left there. I'd like to move $6,410 from fixed charges up to regular ed instructional support. That's due our policies came in better than we had hoped. I'd like to transfer $100,000 from choice and charter tuition up to regular education instructional support. That is due to a lot of the schools, the students that were in charter school last year either came back to our district or went elsewhere, but we do not have as many students in charter school as we did last year. I would like to transfer $16,776 from special education transportation to regular ed transportation. After we started the year, we had students move in who were more than 1.5 miles from a bus stop. We needed to put them on a van. So the compilation of that with additional McKinney-Vento transportation, that's the transportation for homeless students that we're supposed to get reimbursement from the state, but we don't. That's why we need that there. I'd like to transfer $4,889 in E from school security to athletics and student activities. School security is really a nice way of saying the recess and lunchroom monitors, who is just like a revolving door, because those positions are 2 or 3 hours a day, depending on what school building you're in, and we just have people going in and out all the time, and there's not the coverage that we expected to have there. And moving that up to athletics and student activities, because when the school committee voted to reinstate certain sports last year, the vote was to reinstate the salaries for coaches, but not the expenses, the materials that are needed for those sports teams, so we had to purchase those. That's why that need is there. And to transfer $1,797 from special ed instructional support to special education technology, just some technology some special education students needed to have this school year. So I would like to have you consider that before we go on to the other vote.
Can I have a motion on those 6? Second? Okay, discussion. So just briefly, Cheryl, I want to make sure I understand it. So like looking at C, the transfer 100,000 K. So this is looking backwards, that we had set the money aside and
we build a budget in January, February based on the number of students that are in choice and charter schools outside the district. And then we get the first report in January of where the students really are.
Okay.
And we had much fewer students in charter schools this year than we had when we built the budget.
Okay.
Some of them returned to us.
Good.
Cheryl, can you just remind me, what's instructional support cover?
It's everything that goes into the classroom. So not only teacher salaries, but all types of materials, the technology that goes into the classrooms that aren't building-based or district-wide based, but into classroom technology, those types of things. Everything for students in the classroom.
Thank you. Can you go over that school security thing one more time?
We had a number of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 now, put in positions for recess and lunchroom monitors. We have reduced number of paraprofessionals in our building, but we need to have somebody there out on the
Playground with teachers.
playground and actually in the cafeteria. We don't have enough staff that has free time to do that anymore. So we pay them $12 an hour to come in for 2 hours a day and 3 hours a day, depending on the building. 3 hours because you have more lunch periods and recess periods. And it's kind of a revolving door. Everybody says, that sounds like great. In the middle of my day, I'll go to work for 2 hours. Yeah, that only lasts for a certain amount of time. So we have that revolving door. We build the budget based on the fact that we hope we'll have somebody here all year, but it never happens that
So
way.
what will that not occur, or who will?
No, it'll still happen. What we're doing is going back into the budget from what happened this year that's just ending. We've built it into the new budget, and we'll hope that somebody will say, that's a great idea, and think it's great from, September to June.
In each building, we have more than one person, Jason, so if there's 3 people at Ruggles Lane that do it, and one resigns from the district, we still have 2 going on. So there still is coverage.
So basically, this money is not spent.
It's not spent.
So, and what we're trying to do is reuse it for things that were.
Right.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay, we have to do the old, somebody has to not vote.
Do we have to pull out
I
don't think
3510,
so.
3520?
Yes, so I think Peggy, you should abstain from the athletic one. We could do that one separately, Jess?
Yep.
It's a simple majority to transfer.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sarabia? Mr. Spear?
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain? Mr. Leclerc?
Yes.
Mr. Wigler? Mrs. Thompson?
Abstain from this one.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Chairman Wolanen?
Yes.
And then we could do the total group of them from A to F as well.
Okay, may I ask this one question? Why is Deborah abstaining?
But not
No,
Deborah,
Deborah
it's
is-
Mrs. Thompson, because
Mrs. Thompson.
she has a conflict of interest. She works as an official for our athletic department.
Ah, gotcha,
so
okay.
she can't vote on that
Yeah,
one.
gotcha.
With 2 good knees
Didn't
now.
know that.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sarabia?
Yes.
Mr. Spear?
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes.
Mr. Wigler?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Chairman Wolanen?
Yes.
And now the one that I
Yep.
skipped over last week, I apologize. The motion that's on the agenda, motion to authorize the Director of Administrative Services to make necessary transfers to close the fiscal year 2017 budget. I've asked for this a number of years. I don't expect that we'll have too much to be moving, and I do not expect it all to move into athletics, so we could do it as one vote.
So.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Oh,
Who
what?
made the motion?
I think,
Ned made the motion.
did Ned make the motion?
Yeah, you seconded it.
Who seconded? That seconded? Who made the
No, you
motion?
Okay, you made the motion. Yeah, never mind.
All right, let's cut through this confusion. Any discussion, now that we get that all straight? Okay,
Mr. Marsh? Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sarabia?
Yes.
Mr. Spear? Mrs. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc?
Yes.
Mr. Wigler? Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
And Chairman Wolanen?
yes,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's roll on to the updated report on Ocam Center School repairs.
Yes, just an updated report on the needed repairs for asbestos abatement at the Ocam Center School. On on June 20th, the town meeting in Ocam voted to take from stabilization up to $105,000 to abate the asbestos in various rooms in the building, those to be identified as the kitchen, some adjacent hallways, and the cafeteria. That was good news for us, and then on Friday, there were wonderful news with the override passing and some debt exclusions passing to take care of our PA system in that building, as well as a dishwasher replacement. So we're very happy about that. On Friday, I and other representatives from plant facilities and other departments of the school met with Selectman Starbird at his invitation. Present at that meeting was an individual from Section 4 DEP. I think he's some sort of an asbestos inspector, I'm thinking. He really, his title doesn't really give us much information as to what his actual function is. He was there, and Mr. Starbird spent a lot of time talking with him in our presence to say, if we don't totally abate the asbestos, couldn't we just spot abate? In other words, this is a really bad section, we can fix that, but leave the kind of good sections, and the floor is 43 years old. Mr. Healy, the representative from DEP, said, yeah, you can do that, yeah, no question, you can do that, but he said, my guess is why ADT said to do it, the whole abatement, was because every year you're going to have more loose tiles. It's 43-year-old floor. Mr. Starbird continued the conversation. We went to every spot where there was obviously need for abatement and ripping up of old flooring, and where there was a lot of damage, a lot of damage in the kitchen, and so forth. But 2 or 3 times I said to the representative, I said, because we're pretty much ignoring what ADT said to us, ATC said to do, I'm a little nervous. Is the department ready to give us a formal written thing to say, yeah, just do a spot abatement, that'd be great? He said, oh, absolutely, we won't do that. I said, well, who's your supervisor? And he said, well, I'll talk to my supervisor, but he won't do that either. And I said, okay, so it became obvious that Mr. Starbird, and I felt he was speaking for the Board of Selectmen in Ocam. I mean, I don't know if that's the truth, but that's certainly the way it sounded. That there would only be spot abatements in the kitchen, spot abatements in the cafeteria, and spot abatements in the 2 adjacent hallways. We talked about tiles that would be, for example, the corners broken off, and Mr. Starbird queried, couldn't we just put some epoxy resin in there to keep any kind of fibers from floating up, and wouldn't that be sufficient? And the department person said, well, yeah, it would stop, the thing from being friable, but it's probably not a long-term solution. So that went on for probably an hour and a half, I think we were there, having conversations about this. I continued to query, this doesn't seem to be what we thought we were going to be doing. So at that, I did send a letter to the selectmen, kind of summarizing the meeting, querying, well, why are we doing this? We also had a lot of conversations about procurement and about the need to go through a procurement process, the need to access an environmental company that would be able to write the scope of services, and et cetera. We had some preliminary information about that. Cheryl has done a lot of research and understands that we have to follow Chapter 149 in order to probably move forward with this abatement. Mr. Starbird basically, I asked him a number of questions, sent this letter that some of you have had the chance to read, to all of them saying, let's think about this, what are we doing? We say, what are we doing? Because I don't know if Mr. Starbird realizes that we have a summer program in Hubbardston School. The autistic program is there till August 22nd.
Okay.
Ocam, I'm sorry, in Ocam. And we did not move that, knowing that that would move in the end of August up into Barry, but it's there because there was no planned abatement spot during the course of the summer, but would start probably in early September. So at any rate, even though we have queried and said, please answer us, please talk to us, please tell us what the plan is, we have not heard anything except, would you people move the dishwasher? And I said, well, we'll only move the dishwasher after we talk to ATC to see how we should move it. We don't want to, cause more damage and make friable asbestos for the people who are responsible for working with us and moving the dishwasher. So, Mr. Nutter, you may have something to add to this. I know you've been at the selectmen's meetings, and we're just confused. What we thought was happening and what it appears might happen is a source of concern for us. If we're not going to abate the entirety of the rooms that were discussed, we can live with that, I guess. Our only concern is we want to have ATC or environmental concern where we have industrial hygienists who can manage the scope of services. The selectman nor the superintendent can write the scope of services. That's not what we're trained to do. We also know that we have liability, and if the abatement is not done according to specification, and if it's not done, for example, following the procurement requirements, that's a problem. It's a liability for us because it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, and you know what, it's probably a duck. Because you can say, well, it's the town that's doing it, but you all know this is sort of a joint venture where Mr. Labar, at public meetings, has thanked Cheryl for the fact that she would be working with the selectmen and putting together the procurement work that's necessary in order to make sure we're in compliance with all of the procurement statutes in the Commonwealth, and anything that we wouldn't understand, we would be checking with the Inspector General's office. So we're hopeful that we'll get more insight and information from the selectmen, so we know what the time frame might be, and we know what the exact abatement process will be. Because without knowing that, I'm feeling less capable of answering parents when you say, "What are you doing?" I go, "I really don't know now." We thought we met with parents, we understood what ATC was recommending, and so forth. So I did talk briefly to the chair and request that the chair appoint a subcommittee to work with us during the course of this process, and to, if necessary, obviously, to have an environmental concern represent our interests, and for an attorney to represent our interests in the process, to ensure, if we're not going to participate in the process, because that appears that's the case, other than to move the dishwasher, we're just saying, whoa, wait a minute, if this is not set up the way it should be set up, we are going to monitor it from our perspective to make certain that the schools, that we're safeguarded from any kickback from the thing not being done properly. It's an important thing, and we don't want to lose track. I understand that the selectmen are driving the bus, that if they want to do a very minimal spot abatement, and we can comply at least minimally for a short time with the law, we can do that. But you and I both know we'll be subject to further inspections, and those inspections, when other tiles are, then there's going to be these spot abatements that go on probably to the end of time. So we're just concerned, and wanted the committee to understand that we just need to have a monitoring position so that we can save the liability of the district.
Maureen, did you expect the amount of asbestos that needs to be compliant for kids or people to be infected?
We tried.
The other thing about it is that if you do a tasting like this, the setup to start a project, whatever project may be, they want to really kill it.
We
You're
agree.
doing it multiple times. That's not so good.
Well, I
Did the state say that it was safe for kids?
well, it's not, well, right now, the kitchen situation is not safe even for our employees. That's really in bad shape. That has to be addressed. And they're still talking about, at least Mr. Selectman Starbird was talking about a partial abatement even in there. And of course, in order to do an abatement, you need to have an environmental team on site. And that environmental team not only puts the scope of services together, but also monitors the job, and then monitors the air and takes samples, makes sure that the asbestos is properly disposed of. We're responsible for proper disposal, or subject to huge fines if we just kind of toss it in the landfill. So we're just concerned that, it's been a little over a week, and I know that doesn't seem like a long time, but the summer is short. And we were hopeful that we would have had the opportunity to sit down and talk about the abatement and the schedule. And we recommend that we stay with ATC as the environmental concern, because they're uniquely qualified, because they've been doing all the inspections for the last several years. So we're just pretty much hanging right now, waiting for the selectmen to respond. We hope they will do so soon, but what we feel the need for a subcommittee of the school committee to assist us in this monitoring during the course of the summer. And we are full bore ahead. Our plant and facilities department is working very hard over in New Braintree as our teachers preparing for the move. In Barry, we're working really hard there to prepare to receive some students. I had a long talk with the principal yesterday in New Braintree, OCAM principal, and I said, "Okay, Trish, how do you want to stay?" I said, "I have no idea what the abatement's going to be." I said, if they do an abatement that is not does not comply with the law, then the committee will have to decide: are we rolling the kids back in there, or are we going to try to make certain that it's done according to the procurement statute as well as the environmental monitoring that's necessary and required. So I'm just a little nervous, because I was nervous even if everything was going to go okay, because you know, it's sort of a big thing to make sure we get all the kids where they need to be and still have the best education we can possibly have. We're thinking, should we move technology? Not move technology. And Sheila and I and the principal were trying to work on that yesterday. Are we going to move it or not, or shouldn't we move it? So at any rate, I know this will work out in the end, but it looks like it's going to be a little more complex than we had thought when we began the process about a week ago.
So I think we will have an ad hoc committee, and I think Walter and Ned, you definitely have to be on. And anybody else who'd like to be, let Jess know. And I'm thinking that.
Plant facilities director and assistant will be
Right, oh yeah,
with
sure.
us, and Cheryl and myself.
Claire?
I know. Yeah. So,
Well, basically, the contractor is supposed to handle that and give you a done situation. Yeah, they give you a situation that's already completed.
so we're just hopeful that we can get some information back from the selectmen post haste and understand what they're sort of planning, so that obviously, their planning is critical to our work. If Cheryl's going to do the procurement, we have to understand what we're procuring and so on. So,
Mark?
So, let me see there. There is in town, fully aware of this
yes.
situation, that you need this, massive. So you came out to the town meeting, and kind of voted to implement this whole thing.
Yeah.
And now, after the fact, the select decides that they want to do something different. So who's going to notify the parents?
Well, obviously, I'm not.
If I was a parent, I'd be a little.
Yeah,
concerned.
I'm not sure what the select board thinks. Mr. Starbird represented himself as speaking for the board. I don't know if that's true. That's why we wrote a very formal letter to them saying, please get back to us about what you're thinking and what the plans are, so we can begin to generate time frames and timelines. We have not yet heard back from them. I think that they met last night, and I know Mr. Nutter attended the meeting.
No, they're gonna meet Friday,
Oh.
specifically to discuss the asbestos issue.
Okay.
So, and I-
Friday at what time?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Jason?
What does the school committee have any say, do you have any say over what happens and where we go with this, or is it all the select board,
Well,
what's our role?
technically, the selectmen own the building. We only lease classrooms in the classroom space. And we're responsible for $5,000 of stuff, fixing the building here and there. Anything over that is the town's responsibility because it's their asset. So as far as what our obligations are, obviously to ensure that the health and safety of the student and our employees is safeguarded at all times. There is no question that we could, with epoxy resins and all kinds of other, half measures, get portions of the floors that tend to be, friable and deteriorating to the point where DEP might say, yeah, it looks good for this year, we'll be back to inspect it. But we would not eradicate the problem. All we would do is push
I
off.
can imagine most people are in favor of going that route.
Well, I don't know. That's what we seek. We seek.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I would think we would all have concerns about that, I hope. So ultimately, what, do we have any decision-making power over that?
Well, you have decision-making power not to put the kids back. I'm not saying that that's going to be that's necessary or whatever, but you have the capacity to say, we're not going to lease this building anymore. I don't see that ever happening. But as far as to tell the selectmen, if they are representing their community, exactly how to maintain, I don't think I can do that.
Can we just do that now?
Or tell them what?
If they don't follow through with
Well,
the whole.
well, I think we have to have our environmental person come in and talk them, the town, and so it's through, what do they mean by spot abatement? We can make it safe for the children for this year, but because of the deterioration of a 43-year-old floor, the level of inspections will increase, and then, and then in a year, or 6 months, or 2 years, we're gonna do another spot abatement. We might be abating the spots we've already abated, because, obviously, if this floor were 3 years old, and we just had an area where we had some water damage, that's one thing. It's 43 years old, and it's beginning to just deteriorate, even, without water damage. Portions of the floor are cracked and brittle because the expansion of floors and so forth. Places near the doorways where they enter, the thresholds, where there's a lot of traffic and stuff, there's a lot of breaking of tiles there. The kitchen is really bad.
No, I get it. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable sending the kids in with like a half-done job. I mean,
Well, see, technically, a half-done job could meet the monitoring specifications of DEP, okay?
But you haven't got anything from DEP on that.
Well, no, and I don't expect to, but I'm saying,
You will get it.
well, I agree, and the guy basically told me he doubted. But certainly the gentleman that Mr. Seibert had with him, that he had invited to the school, was basically saying, you can do a partial abatement of the worst and leave the not so bad that doesn't appear to have a lot of brittle tiles and so forth alone. When I said, well, why would you ignore what ATC said? And he said, I know why ATC said what they said. They said that because of the age of the floor, that it's, to do a spot abatement is probably not in the best interest of a 43-year-old floor. But he said you could comply minimally with, air quality and so forth by doing spot abatement.
So the
All
hard,
the years I've been working with DEP, they do not give you a break.
Thank you, Tex, because I said, where is this man from? Usually, if anything, I'm usually going, I can't believe they want us to do this. This is absurd. It's so over the top. Claire, you and I have met with, right? We always say, this is crazy. We can't, so I don't know I don't know the gentleman. His name was Donald Healy.
Was it central or western?
He was central, I believe. He's not, he wasn't western. And western is where the Janet McKenna comes out of that. She does the occupational stuff to make sure that it's safe for children and employees, so.
so if Walter goes to the meeting Friday, the selectmen's meeting, select board's meeting, and then depending on what that generates, then our subcommittee should have a meeting next week anyway.
Yeah.
The subcommittee can meet pretty much on the dime, so we can inform the full committee as to what's going on. The $105,000 should cover
Oh,
everything.
More than enough.
Okay, so-
More than enough. There was never the expectation we'd use the whole 105. That was like the way out there if something were to go
Right,
wrong
but
in
the
the midst
town
of it.
voted that amount
Yes.
to cover everything.
Well,
So
we
the
don't know.
citizens of the town
I
pretty
think
much-
that's what they did, but I think, Walter, you mentioned in an email to me, perhaps we should have amended the warrant article to say, for the total abatement of, so there wouldn't have been questions. But the selectmen at that meeting never said, this abatement will probably not cost $100,000 because we're contemplating spot abatements. They never said that, so,
Right, but the $105,000, the sense of the town is to cover everything.
Well, I hate to speak for the sense of the town.
Well, I mean, it seems that that's somewhat obvious that it should be the sense of the town. And to do a spot
It
abatement,
was voted in the town, it was voted 133, and I don't think there were any nays. It was 133 yeses, and I don't think it was a vote or show of hands.
okay,
I
so,
don't think there were any nays.
so I think we need to wait, obviously, we need to wait till Friday's meeting to find out if, in fact, he speaks for the select board, or if he speaks for himself, and it just is not happy with the whole thing. I will tell you that many years ago, I handled a contract for Libby, Montana, when I was with the federal government. It was multi-million dollars, it was asbestos, and if you don't do it right, everybody will come out of the woodwork. So you can, no, I'm serious, so you can envision if there are spot abatements, and even though somebody says, well, we'll do this spot, do that spot, sometime in October, some mother's gonna come and say, you know what, my daughter or son never gets sick, and they've been coughing for a week. I spoke with an attorney, and they said, 15 years from now, you may find your child is very sick, and there will be a lawsuit, even though everything was done at least correctly in that aspect, but we still have to defend the lawsuit. From our point of view, we want the whole thing done. If that's what the town wants done, then we have to hopefully be with the town.
Yeah.
I hate to say versus the selectmen or a selectman, but that has to be our point of view. We want the whole thing done. Peggy?
No, I just had a question. So was the intent of this person coming on Friday to not move the kids? To be able to get it done over the summer?
Who, the Selectman Starbird?
Yeah.
I have no idea what his tenor was. I think it was financial. I don't think it was because whether we move the students or not to get the abatement done, because we have now lost a week. We still have to go through the procurement process. We have to move the kids even if we spot abate. But that is so simple for us, really, when you think about trying to get the building safe and secure for the students, that having a place to move them is really a luxury. It's a real luxury that we can say, we can move them, and then when necessary, move them, spread them back out between New Braintree and Ocam again.
Anybody else, committee members? I know I'm asking committee members first. Okay, yes?
Steve, I'll say, Steve told me today he was thrilled that $35,000.
That's a good sign.
Okay, so,
That's a very good sign.
please, if anybody else wants to be on the subcommittee, please let Jess know. Jeff?
Yeah, well, my concern is that we're doing 105 now, they use up that 105 to the week spot 8. They're not gonna use it.
No.
We're still gonna have to pay more later to get the rest of it.
We don't, the town does.
Well, either way,
Yeah.
the people,
Oh, no, no.
So, I mean, it's not,
Well,
it's not in the best interest.
Well, we agree, but the select board, it does have, the authority and the power to manage the, their share of the budget. And so we just want to make certain that the committee is up to speed, that we have a scope of services that we can look at with our environmentalists and say, is this a reasonable scope of services? Is this what we should be doing? Should we be doing something different? Should we be doing something more? My concern is if some bid goes out that doesn't follow procurement and/or doesn't include the scope of services that's really necessary, we really have just wasted a lot of time. So I'm just hopeful that Steve is, as you point out, and we're probably okay.
Anyone else? Because there's another meeting that should
Yes.
be going on. Are we good? Okay.
So you'll let me know when you
Yes.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
I second.
Okay, good, we're done.